I am a former Michigan State Senator. I served on the Michigan Senate Elections and Government Reform Committee. I took those duties very seriously to the point of diagramming out all of our election processes, so I had a pretty good understanding of how elections were supposed to work from a book perspective. But I have another perspective that's useful to this discussion is that something that I couldn't do while I was running for office is actually I served as a poll challenger in Detroit at the AV Counting Board for the election day from 5 p.m. through the next day into the evening of the following day on November 4th. So I was actually at the Detroit AV Counting Board, heard about all the things that happened there, all the cardboard up on the windows. Yes, I was there. I was one of the people blocked from returning back into the Detroit AV Counting Board, so I could resume my duties as poll challenger. I was up training our next batch of poll challengers as to what they need to look out for and what we had been seeing. And coincidentally, by the way, that was when they were counting the military ballots, which, just so you guys know, that's when they duplicate the ballots, because the military ballots come in a format that's different from those that can be read by these tabulators. And if you don't have a Republican and a Democrat watching that, it's ripe for malfeasance, if you will, and that's exactly what happened. So along with that background, I'm actually a certified Microsoft small business specialist. In addition to being that, I actually did cabling design the International Space Station, so I have no problem working with technology. So it's kind of a unique background, and just so happened that I was right there on the Detroit AV Counting Board on the night of the election. So I'm going to focus in on just highlight 3 areas of the diagram that Colonel Waldron just showed you, because that's important for everybody to understand. For people on the ground, these are the key pieces of technology. You talked about ImageCast Central. That's the equipment that I witnessed out at the Detroit Counting Board. It features a high-speed scanner and a workstation associated with it. These were networked in turn with adjudicator machines, which anything that was rejected by the high-speed scanner would go over to this adjudicator machine. That was part of the absentee ballot counting suite, if you will, for Dominion. In addition, they had something that was called Local Data Center, where all the election officials would work from a central computer workstation with a series of laptops, et cetera, that were connected to the rest of these computers. We'll get into that in a little bit later here. But that ImageCast Central area is one of the key pieces of, or key systems, if you will, that are on the ground for the absentee ballots in particular. If you're at an in-person polling location, you'll have the ImageCast precinct set up, and that's on the right-hand side of this diagram. Up on the top is kind of the local data center and the kind of the eye in the sky, the overarching look at what's going on with the election. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail later. And as you guys know, Dominion Voting Systems was used here in Arizona in Maricopa County, and they were using some of the same equipment we were just talking about in regards to ImageCast Precinct and also ImageCast Central, the scanner there. So I said that I was in your position before, right? So if I were in your position, these are kind of some of the key questions I would be asking in regards to all that we're hearing about this testimony regarding this election. Number one, was the chain of custody for the election artifacts broken? And thank you very much, Senator-elect Townsend, for bringing that up. That is a key term for everybody to understand, chain of custody. And we're going to go over a little diagram on specifically where some of my comments are going to focus in on in that chain of custody. All right, and the key is to hit the right arrow. All right, and was there evidence of election fraud? There can be fraud that happens that may not even violate statute, but you know that the intent is there to defraud the election, and they take advantage of loopholes that we have in the law. For example, in Detroit, we know that there was an ability for people to vote both at the polls and absentee. So some people's votes were more important than others. Was there evidence that election statutes were violated? Yeah. In Michigan, we have evidence to suggest that's exactly what happened. Was there evidence of foreign agents with the ability to manipulate the election data and third parties getting access to that data? We believe that we've seen evidence of that as well. But the other thing we need to ask is, well, all right, what are we going to do about it if we see all this happening? And what options do you have as legislators? All right, so let's go to this chain of custody, and I could go into a lot more detail on this chain of custody, but I like to simplify it into just 4 key artifacts. qualified voter file, i.e. who's registered to go off and vote in your state. Number 2, poll book. That's a precinct-specific extract of the data from your qualified voter file. The ballot itself, pretty important artifact, right? But then, in the spirit of the old Stalin quote, it's not he who votes that counts, it's the one who counts the vote that counts. You got to look at the ballot tabulator and how the votes are tallied. And that was my focus when I went to the Detroit AV Counting Board. I was one of those folks that was not specifically assigned to any particular counting station. I was looking at the big picture. And we'll go over what I found here in a sec. First of all, everybody hopefully has seen the idea that there's been a lot of voter anomalies. This is our first clue that something's happened. When you're on the ground, you can see all the things that are happening, onesie, twosie style. You say, hey, wait a minute, that envelope was backdated, or you can see that they adjudicated something in favor of the Democrat instead of the Republican or something like that. That's easy to go off and see, but it's very difficult to see the big picture. That comes out afterwards with experts like Colonel Waldron. And in this case, we first started seeing issues when people were talking about Benford's law being violated. That's actually used in criminal court cases to determine whether or not fraud existed. So that was the first indicator that some of the analyses we've seen flagged that. That's not proof. I mean, it's getting it's telling you that it's you've got something off here that you got to investigate. Then we've seen linear regression analyses that there's a lot of noise in, but it seemed to indicate a pattern of vote distribution that indicated some data manipulation. Then, most recently, we have actually seen folks who believe that they've identified specifically what the algorithm that was used to switch some of the data. So, some other things that were kind of odd, and you don't see while you're necessarily on the ground, but in retrospect, you'll be able to get access to it. This is actually documented as part of the affidavit that was submitted in a lawsuit that's put in Michigan by Sidney Powell and in other states. And you guys have voted quite a bit. Most of you have already served in office, right? Do you remember any of your votes being tabulated with a decimal point on the back of them? I don't remember any. My 8 years serving in the Michigan Senate, any times where I actually had a decimal point after a vote tally.
So that would suggest that a partial person was voting?
Well, sometimes, there were people that tried to make you feel like a partial person when you serve, but no, that wasn't the case.
Hey, keep watching.